Well, we're getting closer and closer to the end of the series. Let's see what Book 5 has to offer us today. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix was published on June 21st, 2003. I actually remember when this came out. I was pretty young at the time, but I do remember going to the library with my dad and seeing multiple copies of this book advertised all over. Now, at the time it came out, my parents didn't want me to read it, and after having read the entire series myself now, I understand why. Anyway, this is the longest book in the Harry Potter series, with the edition I have being a whopping 870 pages long. You'd think that would be an impossible read, but this story, like the others, is still easy to understand and grasp. I'll go over what really makes this book difficult to read in the review section. Anyway, what has our boy Harry been up to since Voldemort came back? Well, not much. He's still back at the Dursley home and hasn't been getting clear communication from any of his friends. You'd think they would want to keep him informed so that he can prepare himself, but so far nothing seems to have happened. Yet. To keep tabs on what's happening, Harry has been hoping to hear something on the Muggle news, but like I said, nothing has happened. Well, one night, Harry was out of the house and on his way home with Dudley when 2 Dementors appeared and attacked them. Now, Harry isn't allowed to use magic outside of school, but he had no choice. He had to defend himself if he was to get himself and Dudley back home safely. Also, want to know the weird part? The Dementors were intending to kiss them. After Harry uses a Patronus to get rid of the Dementors, Mrs. Fig, Harry's neighbor, who we learn is a squib, helps Harry take Dudley home. Now, Harry does immediately get a letter from the Ministry saying that since he used magic outside of school, he has been expelled and has to go to a disciplinary hearing. Now, Harry's friends have heard about this too and intend to help. Also, Petunia receives a howler telling her to remember. The reason this had to be sent was to keep Harry staying with them where he was safe. Later on, some members of the Order of the Phoenix have come to take Harry to their headquarters at number 12 Grimmauld Place, Sirius Black's family home. The Order of the Phoenix is a secret organization that Dumbledore started years ago to fight back against Voldemort and his Death Eaters. Harry wants to be involved, but is told he's too young. Although that doesn't stop him and his friends from trying to eavesdrop on some meetings. Now, because the Ministry of Magic doesn't want to believe so badly that Voldemort has come back, they're running a smear campaign against Harry and Dumbledore, claiming that they're lying about Voldemort's return and questioning their mental stability, which will make convincing others to prepare to fight a lot harder. Arthur Weasley escorts Harry to the Ministry of Magic so that he can attend the hearing, but thankfully they arrive early enough to make it to the hearing since the time and location was changed. Harry does his best to defend himself, but it's when Dumbledore enters and brings Mrs. Fig with him as a witness doesn't mean that Harry is not expelled from Hogwarts, and was clearly defending himself. While Harry is free to go, I'm sure this does anger quite a few people who work for the Ministry who have been trying to silence Harry, including Fudge himself. It's time to go back to Hogwarts. Some important things that are happening is that Ron and Hermione have become prefects. They all meet a new friend from Ravenclaw named Luna Lovegood, who is friends with Ginny. Also, they have a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, Dolores Umbridge. I wonder what that noise was. Anyway, also because of the smear campaign against Harry, a lot of the students think Harry is crazy and Dumbledore shouldn't be believed. Especially since, at the time, Harry didn't want to talk about how Cedric died. And now, if Harry does try to say how, people still won't believe him due to what's being said about him in the news. Now, I'm sure you've all heard the name Umbridge before. I will go into this more in the analysis, but I'm sure many of you who aren't familiar with the series know that she is the most universally hated character in the entire series. And here's why. First of all, her idea of teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts is by not using any magic at all and just reading about it. And we all know that doesn't help at all, especially now when the kids need to learn how to defend themselves. Harry is naturally upset with this new arrangement and argues with Umbridge, which lands himself in a detention where he has to write, "I must not tell lies," until the enchanted cut on his hand stays instead of disappears. And to make matters worse, Umbridge is appointed High Inquisitor of the school, which gives her some power to make decrees and fire teachers. While the news paints it as a good thing, we all know this is just so the Ministry can have more control. And because of all this, many of the students are upset that they're not being taught to defend themselves properly. So Hermione comes up with the idea to start a secret group with some students where they can learn how to defend themselves with Harry as their teacher. All the students who wish to participate in the group meet at the Hogshead in Hogsmeade, where they decide to go through with this plan and let them know when the first meeting will be. They decide to call the group Dumbledore's Army, because that's the very thing the Minister of Magic fears most of all. Well, it seems our crew was overheard, and a decree went out that no clubs, teams, groups, etc. are allowed anymore. Now, in the case of Quidditch, the team captains did have to send an appeal. However, it seems Umbridge was very biased as to which teams remained. The good news is that Professor McGonagall was able to step in and get the appeal. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Ron tried out to be the new keeper for the Gryffindor team and got in. Yay! But we'll come back to that later. Anyway, Dumbledore's army now needs to find a room to meet where they won't be discovered. Luckily, Dobby is able to point Harry to the Room of Requirement, which is a magical room that provides exactly what the person needs in that moment. Dumbledore's army finally meets for the first time, and the lesson goes great. Now, the meetings continue for a while, and the kids are continuing to learn how to properly defend themselves. Now, a couple things happen. Firstly, while Ron seems to be a decent keeper when he's not under pressure, due to the taunting and jeering of the Slytherins, it's not doing him any good. And after Malfoy provokes Harry enough, him and George beat up Malfoy pretty badly. Because of this, Umbridge bans Harry, Fred, and George from the team. Umbridge wasn't too happy to have her power usurped by Professor McGonagall, so she took matters into her own hands to get another decree. Secondly, Hagrid is back from his journey! In the previous book, Dumbledore tells Hagrid and Madame Maxime to go seek out the Giants and convince them to be on their side and not Voldemort's side, since they were on Voldemort's side in the past. Hagrid talks about how things were going well at first, until the chief was killed and more Giants who supported that chief were killed as well. Also, the Death Eaters had already arrived by then and they were already in the Giants' favor. The important thing was that they got the message out there. And we're all glad Hagrid is okay. Now, Christmas is approaching. At the meeting before the break, Harry has his first kiss with Cho Chang under the mistletoe. Well, all that joy soon goes out the window since Harry has a vision of Arthur Weasley getting attacked by a snake. Harry naturally freaks out and is taken to Dumbledore to tell him about it. Apparently, the attack actually happened and Arthur was luckily found thanks to the help of the portraits of the old headmasters and headmistresses of Hogwarts. He is taken to St. Mungo's, the wizarding hospital. Because of all this, Harry and the Weasley kids are sent to spend Christmas in Grimmauld Place with Sirius. They later go to the hospital with some other members of the Order to visit Arthur, and he's recovering nicely. Now on Christmas Day, the kids accidentally find themselves near the ward of the hospital that focuses on mind recovery. Apparently Gilderoy Lockhart is here and is slowly but surely getting his memories back, but that's not the point. Neville is here with his grandmother visiting his parents, who were tortured to madness by Bellatrix Lestrange, a Death Eater. Now, because Dumbledore fears that Voldemort will possess Harry since he knows they're connected, he has Harry take occlumency lessons from Snape in order to protect his mind. These lessons do not go well, and it doesn't help that Harry is just too darn curious about what Voldemort is trying to show him behind the mystical door in the hallway. Valentine's Day comes up, and Harry's first date with Cho, it does not go well. But there is some good news. Luna's father is the head editor of The Quibbler, a magazine that most people don't really read since it's more of a conspiracy theorist type of magazine. Hermione has the idea to get Rita Skeeter to interview Harry about what really happened that night at the graveyard, and it would be published in The Quibbler. Luna is on board, but it takes some convincing and a reminder that Hermione knows Rita's secret and would get her arrested if she didn't cooperate. The issue of The Quibbler finally releases with the article, and what makes this whole experience funnier is that Umbridge banned the reading of The Quibbler, but that just makes the students want to read it more. Slowly but surely, more students begin to believe Harry. Umbridge has begun her round of firings, starting with Professor Trelawney, but Dumbledore is already 5 steps ahead of her. Trelawney is not forbidden from the castle grounds since that power still remains with Dumbledore, and he also appointed a new divination teacher before Umbridge got the chance. Firenze, the centaur, is now the student's new divination teacher, and he seems to be doing alright, although he can't go back among his own people since they banished him for helping Dumbledore. Also, Dumbledore's army was discovered! Oh no! Luckily, Dobby was able to warn them all in time during the meeting, and most of the students scattered. Harry was unfortunately caught and taken to Dumbledore's office, where Fudge and several other people were there. It seems Cho's friend Marietta ratted them all out. Good thing Hermione jinxed the list they all signed, or they would have never known who dared rat them out. Dumbledore takes full responsibility for the group and escapes to avoid arrest. Because of this, Umbridge is now headmistress of the school, as decreed by Fudge. Well, that sucks. And to make matters worse, Harry can't take occlumency anymore because he was so darn curious to know which memories Snape put into the pensieve before their lessons. It seems when he was young, Snape was bullied by Harry's father, James, and his band of friends. Snape catches Harry in the act of seeing it, and well, no more occlumency. The whole experience with Umbridge as headmistress isn't all bad, since Fred and George have been taking this opportunity to wreak havoc all over the school. And because the teachers hate Umbridge too, they're not really doing much about it. Although eventually Umbridge does catch up to Fred and George, and the two escape the school to go start their joke shop business. Well, let's spitfire some more important events here. Harry meets with McGonagall to go over career options, and he wishes to be an Auror. McGonagall promises to help him to the best of her abilities. 10 Death Eaters, including Bellatrix Lestrange, have escaped Azkaban. Hagrid introduces Harry and Hermione to his half-brother Grop, since he fears Umbridge will boot him out soon, and he needs someone to talk to Grop. Ron wasn't there, since this was during a Quidditch match where Ron actually did a good job, and it's finally time for the students to take their OWL exams. At first, the exams seem to go well, until Harry falls asleep during the History of Magic exam and sees a vision of Sirius being tortured by Voldemort in the Department of Mysteries. Now, why didn't he immediately go tell McGonagall? Because when Umbridge tried to boot Hagrid off the castle grounds the night before, McGonagall tried to step in, but was stunned by 4 stunning spells at once. That landed her in the hospital. So to make absolutely sure Sirius was home, Harry's friends help him sneak into Umbridge's office to use the fireplace. Harry only sees Kreacher, who tells him what he feared, and he can't even stay that long in the fireplace since Umbridge caught him in the act of using the fireplace. Umbridge tries to force Harry to tell her who he contacted, but couldn't since she used all the Veritaserum on an interview with Harry, and Snape can't make it fast enough. Harry was also able to get his message to Snape, who claimed he had no idea what he was talking about. Hermione lies to Umbridge, claiming that Dumbledore has a secret weapon in the forest, and because the Centaurs are already mad, and they're even madder at Umbridge for offending them, they drag her off into the forest. They're about to drag off Harry and Hermione, but they're saved by Grop, who has been looking for Hagrid. Harry is determined to go to the Ministry of Magic to save Sirius. Ron, Hermione, Luna, Ginny, and Neville go with him. They take Thestrals there and reach the Department of Mysteries. Harry finds a mysterious orb there, which is revealed to be a prophecy about him and Voldemort. The Death Eaters appear and demand Harry hand over the prophecy. Here it's revealed that Voldemort intentionally showed Harry that vision, hoping he would come grab the prophecy for him. It seems Sirius was perfectly safe at home. Well, shoot. Harry and friends do their best to fight off the Death Eaters, but they're later cornered and are saved by members of the Order, including Sirius, who had come to join the fight. The battle is intense, and in the commotion when Harry and Neville were trying to escape, they accidentally shatter the prophecy. The battle also isn't casualty-free, as Sirius is fighting Bellatrix and she knocks him right into a veil in the Department of Mysteries. Now, I actually had to look this up, but this veil is actually a bridge between the living and the dead. Once you pass through, you are immediately killed. There is no escape and no way to pull people out. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. Sirius is dead. Harry is enraged and intends to kill Bellatrix, but Voldemort has appeared. He tries to kill Harry, but Dumbledore arrives in time to save the day, and he and Voldemort duel. It eventually reaches a point where Voldemort possesses Harry and tries to get Dumbledore to kill Harry, but is unsuccessful as Voldemort can't stand possessing Harry for so long. Voldemort grabs Bellatrix and escapes, but not before many Ministry members saw him. Well, they can't deny it any longer. Voldemort is back. Harry is sent back to Hogwarts, and Dumbledore tells Harry what the prophecy was, since he was the one who heard it. Professor Trelawney actually was the one who gave that prophecy. This is why Voldemort tried to kill Harry as a baby. Now, Voldemort actually didn't know about the rest of the prophecy. He only knew about the first part, where someone who could destroy him would be born at the end of July to parents who defied him 3 times. Now, Dumbledore didn't tell him this until now, since he thought that Harry was too young to carry such a burden. But because of all this going on, he regrets not telling him earlier, and it seems the final confrontation will end with one killing the other. All of Harry's friends who came with him are getting patched up, and it's almost time for everyone to go home. Harry discovers a 2-way mirror that Sirius had given him earlier. He just forgot to open it. It no longer works since Sirius isn't around anymore. In frustration, Harry shatters the mirror in his trunk. It's time for Harry to go home. The members of the Order make sure to let the Dursleys know that Harry is not to be mistreated. Well, that was a lot to cover. Let's analyze! I didn't cover this at all in the Goblet of Fire review because I felt it would be better here. Harry had really bad PTSD from witnessing Cedric's death. He constantly had nightmares about it, and witnessing his death caused him to see the Thestrals on the school grounds. Now, eventually, Harry was able to move on and focus on other things, but it really affected him in the beginning of the book when he didn't know what was going to happen. Now, I covered this a bit in the Goblet of Fire review with Rita Skeeter, but it's way more prevalent here. Corruption. Because the Ministry of Magic doesn't want to arouse panic in the public, they do everything in their power to make sure no one believes Harry or Dumbledore. Dumbledore even has a lot of his titles removed because of this. The Ministry also made sure the Daily Prophet wrote lies about Harry's mental stability. All of these lies have made it so some students don't want to speak with him. Even some of his friends like Seamus didn't want to speak with him. I didn't mention this in the summary, but Percy even sends Ron a letter telling him to stay away from Harry and to seek advice from Umbridge. Percy is still in hard denial since he was only exposed to what would be considered the bad things, like Sturgis Podmore trespassing in an area of the Ministry he wasn't supposed to and was sent to Azkaban for it. Percy doesn't even want to acknowledge his own family anymore because of these lies and the denial. Well, heck, Umbridge was the one who sent the Dementors after Harry and Dudley because she was so desperate for Harry to be silenced that she took matters into her own hands. It's terrifying to think about. And I'm sure those of you who have seen my 1984 and Animal Farm reviews can find similarities in this. The Ministry of Magic is intentionally using the media to influence the people in a certain way. Also, if you're not familiar with the series, I'm sure some of you would assume that Umbridge is also a Death Eater or someone who works for Voldemort. Well, she's not. The world isn't split that simply. There's not just good people and Death Eaters. Well, yeah, most of the bad guys we have seen so far are Death Eaters, but we always have to remember that even those who claim to be good guys can be evil. Now, why does Umbridge structure her lessons that way she does? Because the Minister has grown more paranoid due to the recent events and fears that Dumbledore is putting together a wizard army to overthrow him. This is why he insists that the students not be taught how to defend themselves properly. The students knew this, which was why they called their group Dumbledore's Army, and Dumbledore himself even went with it to make sure Harry still got his education. As you read along the story and get angry at Umbridge and the wizard media for hurting Harry's reputation, you notice that as soon as news reaches that Death Eaters have escaped Azkaban, the students are more willing to listen to Harry, even more so when Umbridge bans the Quibbler. The book mentions that some students had relatives who were victims of these Death Eaters, and now they start to relate to Harry a bit. It shows that anything can change the minds of the people around you. Now, I didn't talk much about Firenze's divination lessons, but I found this interesting. Trelawney's lessons usually focus on a type of fortune-telling, while Firenze's primarily focuses on how nothing is foolproof. While centaurs do read the stars to determine what is to come, they do know that the future can change. Now, let me go over the first time Harry broke into Umbridge's office to use the fireplace. The reason he did that was because he was feeling confused seeing his father, who he thought was a good man, bully a young Snape. He wanted to talk to Sirius about it. Fred and George were actually the reason he was able to do it, and the reason why they eventually got caught, which led to their escape. Sirius and Remus were there to assure Harry that they were stupid kids at the time. Yeah, they were 15 at the time of the incident, the same age as Harry, but it doesn't mean that they were fully mature. They grew up and changed. Snape seems to still hold a grudge, which is why he's been taking all his anger out on Harry. I like that the story took the time to teach the lesson that nobody was perfect their whole lives. We were all stupid kids at one point in our lives, too. Now let's move on to what I dreaded to talk about. You see, Sirius is my favorite character in the entire series. I read Order of the Phoenix when I was 11 years old. This was the first time I cried while reading a book. It really hurt to get to that part, and after reading it again, I can confirm it still hurts. But let's not get too far into that. Harry's reaction to Sirius's death caused him to lash out at not just Bellatrix or Voldemort, but Dumbledore. He was so angry the whole time that he even wished he wasn't human so he wouldn't have to feel all this pain or care. But as Dumbledore said, that suffering is what makes us human. It shows that we care immensely. Grief is a natural part of life. It's okay to feel sad when we lose someone we love. Contrast that to someone who doesn't feel at all, and it can hurt not just the person you're neglecting, but it can hurt yourself. You see, Sirius cared nothing for Kreacher and didn't even acknowledge him since he was a reminder of the home he left behind. When Sirius told Kreacher to get out, Kreacher used that as a loophole to feed information to the Malfoys. Narcissa, Draco's mother, and Lucius's wife, is part of the Black family, which also led Kreacher to lie to Harry about Sirius's whereabouts. Indifference and neglect do more damage than hatred. It's one thing to hate because you actually feel something, but to not feel anything at all is a whole other deal. Overall, as I mentioned earlier, it was hard to get through. Now, you probably noticed the reason for that was the content. When you write an antagonist who is succeeding at what they're doing and even makes you hate the character for it, that can make reading hard to get through. There's a curse and a blessing to writing a well-done hated character. The curse is that the readers will assume the worst and stop reading, but the blessing is the satisfaction of seeing the character get their comeuppance. The book itself is still easy to understand like its predecessors despite the length, and there are some genuinely good moments in the book among all the bad moments. I'd recommend this book for ages 11 and up. We're starting to reach territory in the story where things are getting more complex and more things are being revealed about why Harry is the way he is and what Voldemort's up to. Also, I don't think younger readers would have the patience for the length of the book. Now, like the rest, you're probably familiar with the movie adaptation of the book. You probably noticed in the summary that a lot of what happened in the book didn't happen in the movie. Even more liberties had to be taken with this one, especially because of the length. A few examples include Dobby being cut entirely from the movie, Ron's experience on the Quidditch field was cut, and in the movie, Cho was the one who ratted out Harry and friends instead of her friend Marietta. Also, I think it was criminal that we didn't get to see more of the portraits of the former headmasters and headmistresses. They were very helpful. Also, like the other books in the series, Order of the Phoenix also had a video game adaptation, and as you notice from the images I use, it was adapted in LEGO Harry Potter Years 5 through 7. This was the hardest book for me to get through, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was difficult for you too. But I wouldn't recommend skipping it and moving straight to the next book. There's a lot of important content here that builds up to what we're about to see later. Tune in next time for Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Happy reading!